This is episode 4 of the Finance Focus series that we're doing once again with Ross and Jarrod. I'm sure I don't have to fully introduce your names at this point. Everyone's watched the first 3 episodes. All right, so we've covered off pretty much everything around forecasting, tech stack, the changing function of the finance role in a business. Today, now that you know what you want to invest in, how to track the return on it, what tools to do that with, now we're going to talk about how you actually get the adoption rates up, because that is the true multiplier in terms of driving return. All right, so adoption. Let's start with the problem. Clearly for me, I think it's the single biggest blocker to project success. So what do you do in your role as CEO of First Focus? I know this, but I'll let you say it, to ensure that adoption rates are as high as required to get the return that you've put into the forecast?
Yeah, it's really, I think we touched about it maybe in even episode 1. I think I said that the only number I actually care about initially is something that measures how much is this being used. And that's because if you ROI times adoption rate equals your actual ROI. And if your adoption rate is 0, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's going to be 0, right? So I think that the reason to measure adoption early is because you need to adjust as quick as you can. If something's not being adopted, I actually like to go back and go, trust the adoption metric, if you know what I mean. If it's being poorly adopted, my hypothesis might be completely wrong. So I think adoption is really important to kind of almost, I don't know what the right word is, to kind of respect, if you know what I mean. Like if this is not being adopted, I've missed something. It's not everyone else's problem that they're not adopting it. I've created a something that's either not as useful as I thought or harder to use than I thought.
Yes, or the messaging's off, or the adoption model is off.
Yeah, look, I mean, sure, you're going to have to do some training, but I don't think many people launch stuff that kind of just go, good luck. People try. We might do a training session. We do some. We have a pilot group. We do all of these things, but at the end, when things aren't being adopted, we kind of blame the people that are supposed to be adopting it. And I think that's the first thing is you turn around and go, how can I make this more valuable to people that I need to use it, right? So how can I make it that we've talked about a lot before, the perceived ease of use and the perceived usefulness. Yeah. You don't get many goes at seeing people kind of getting a result from that. I'll use it twice. This is a waste of time. Or I've tried to follow it through and halfway through and I just gave up. People will give up pretty easily, and it's a lot harder to try and get adoption back after that, right? So that's my first, So that's probably my first point to kind of really drive is consider adoption. If people aren't adopting my thing, it's my fault. It's not theirs, mine. And how can I fix that?
So I'm guessing that the approach to fixing that and even to getting the adoption is going to vary between end users within your business and customers, right? So it depends on the thing you're doing and exactly how you're going to convey that. That's probably something we've talked about less in the events that we have done is external use of whatever you're doing. But I guess maybe from a product perspective, if you're technology focused, that is important. For us, it would be our customers using our F-Connect portal, our customer portal, and potentially the ROI technology budget planner that you've created. We want them to use things that we create. So, how do you best ensure adoption both inside and outside the business?
Yeah, I mean, F-Connect's an interesting thing. Obviously, we've had that for years. It's gone through a couple of iterations. I think we've now got a very mature application out there that's being well utilized. But even then, I can see the difference between a customer that's been with us for 10 years versus a customer that's been with us for 10 months. You'd think the one that's been used for 10 years is the expert user of the tool, but it's not. It's flipped around. People that have done something a certain way for a while are a lot harder to change versus the ones that come in on day one and they've got, hey, first thing we're doing is we're rolling out this new app and it's part of coming on board with First Focus. They're straight into it. Yeah. And so I think that changing people's behavior is hard. And without that trigger of, I said, if you're changing to a new service provider and it comes with this thing, and there's a lot of comms around that. There's a lot of there's a lot of momentum around that.
Key part of the onboarding.
That's right. Versus an organization's been with you for a while, and now you're saying, "Oh, now talk to us this way."
Like, I haven't got a problem to solve.
You have to really have enough of an uplift to get over that barrier to go, okay, what I used to do, I'm going to go here and do this instead.
Yeah. So that is interesting. I actually had Nicole, who heads up our is the owner, I guess, of Connect inside the business, and she said, "Look, just keep getting me more clients because they use it straight away. Like that gets our
that's the best way to get adoption.
Just get more clients. Like, okay, so it's my problem. Great, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So what about you, Jarrod? You work with businesses. You've just given them this carefully curated tech stack. How do you get the people in the business to buy into that change, and not just the decision maker who's got you on to do this, but the actual people within the business that have to feed the data in and actually be users of the system?
I've got two key thoughts in this regard. I don't believe that you just give someone a stack. I think you've got to have the users very much invested in the discovery process as the people that you're asking to adopt that particular platform as well. You can often sell it back to them as if it was their idea in the first place as well, assuming you take them on the journey in a way that's kind of consistent with the usual change management process.
Yeah, we talk about identify the resistors early and get them involved so they feel like their needs are top of the priority.
Yep. And then I used to have an old mentor that said a fish stinks from its head. And I think that what they meant by that was the fact that...
still on the fence, maybe. Here, let's go with this.
It was this idea that actually you need to see the executive and management using that stack as well. Because if the executive and management disconnect and it's not their problem, they just want the output, how do you reasonably expect the users to embrace and adopt that platform as well? And so I think it's a very easy thing for an executive just to sit back and say, I just want the output. But I think you've got to walk a mile in the shoes of the user before you can appreciate whether or not that is genuinely something you can sell. Because one of the most critical parts of any digital transformation endeavor is the change management. And you've got to have that executive level sponsorship. And I think the easiest way to get the sponsorship is to have those executives participate in the platform. It's not always possible, right? But
I mean, he's talking your language, Ross. I mean, we just rolled out a new app internally. I'm assuming I'm allowed to say Sardi by name. Yep,
yeah,
cool. Sardi, there you go. Free advertising. You're welcome. Sponsor the episode. You're very clear in that when we bring on the rest of the business, they need to see that we've been using it really well, that we're bought into it, we're not leaving due dates, whatever, right? You set an example. So I think there's broad buy-in, I would say.
Yeah, and I used the example of, we've talked about the example of a sales opportunity or your timesheets, another good example. It's like everyone else does do timesheets, but I'm the owner, I don't have to. No, that's not, it doesn't work like that. And I'm a very firm believer that, if you're asking other people to do a timesheet and you think you don't have time to do it or it's not important for you, that it's not really a great message you're saying to others. And if you're not going to do it, why are you expecting the adoption of others to be really high? And so same as the sales ops. If the sales guys have all their ops in, but the owner is just his are in his head or hers are in her head, that mentality has to change.
It's interesting, the technology acceptance model, that came in what, 89, I think you were saying?
First 89, yeah.
So that was when the computers were turning up on desks, and that model, as you said, talks about the perceived ease of use, perceived usefulness, but there's a lot of external variables that feed into those two things, right? And I think one of those probably is, how do you see others use it? What's your perception of how they've found it?
That's right. Yeah, the image that comes along with it. We talk about voluntariness, which is, again, we use the sales idea as just an easy example. It's like, well, if you only pay commission on something that's entered you can force things. So there's lots of different ways you can approach it, but the image is interesting. I think, especially when it comes to AI technologies now, the image associated with doing something that is some would consider maybe cutting a corner. I've seen as many people look at use of an AI tool to draft an email, for example, as something that should be celebrated versus something that is cheating or now not genuine. So you've got these interesting image things that come into it. Yeah,
totally. So how do you then convince people who are going to use whichever technology innovative innovation or initiative. That's what I was looking for. Initiative that it is useful. It is in their best interest to take that up. Have you? Again, is it demos? Is it periodic training sessions? Is it executive sponsors sitting alongside these people? Like, what are the real hands-on ways to get past that objection, those objections?
I think the answer is actually founded more in psychology, and where we have the most success is when we attach it to the why, and we actually express a little bit of vulnerability in terms of why the change is necessary and attach that to the KPI or P&L metric and have that user feel invested in the rationale behind the change as well, beyond it being a mandate that's being handed down. I'm not sure that every business can achieve that necessarily, but in an organization that has a really strong culture that's comfortable leaning into that sort of vulnerability and attaching it back to the ultimate why, my experience is that you drive way better adoption because the user understands the benefit to the organization and then potentially to them as a member of that organization as well.
Okay. We did cover it a little bit, but I do want to talk about those resistors and the, like you covered off maybe a couple of episodes ago, where it was, you've got the early adopters, people who love it, the vast majority, probably 70% of your staff that are just, okay, like probably when I'm told, when it happens. And then you've got the ones who are just going to probably stubbornly say no. The adoption framework, the way to get those people involved, just talk me through your approach to that and how you've made sure that, especially when they're in a role that will really benefit from it or are key to the adoption actually paying off. What do you do?
Yeah, so if you've got, you can identify pretty early on who the resistors are. Generally, it's, they're generally going to be pretty
Vocal?
vocal.
Yep.
Good word.
I actually remember I was doing essentially a presentation that you created at another event recently. And I said in the room, look, there's always going to be resistors. I'm sure that you people in the room right now will be thinking right now of those resistors, and like everybody nodded. Like everyone knows who they are. Everyone's got some.
Right. And they're generally going to, we often assume that they are bad and should just get it, and they should just adopt it. And why, if they genuinely are like that, that's a different conversation. We should actually be talking about getting them out of the organization, right? So that's a different problem.
I agree with that, Ross. The first question is, are they right for your organization?
Yeah. So there's that part of it.
Is this an isolated?
Is this a resistor that is that's a culturally out of place, or is it a resistor that is they are, because of their personality, because of the work they're doing day to day, they exist with the pessimistic view of reality, which. There's going to be some people that look at all things overly optimistically, and there's some people going to default to but what could go wrong? The thing is that those people can be really useful, right? And so if you've got a bunch of people that are actually going, oh yeah, but this won't work because of this and this won't, great. Because if you can solve those things up front, like you actually can make sure that this is a more successful implementation, that it'll be adopted better, it'll have better customer experience, all the things that come out of it. If you have the resistors used in the right way and they are resisting but still culturally aligned and have still a view of your end goal that's the same, then as I said, they are very useful to include in the process.
Resisting but constructive.
Right.
So steering committee type participation.
Yeah, you don't want just a room of that, but you need someone like that on the team who's going, yeah, but what about this? But what about that? But no, that's not going to work. You said you don't want too much of that, but there is value in it as long as it's done the right way. And if you actually get over some of those hurdles, you'll make a big dent in the overall adoption process.
And pair them with the high performers too, because energy is contagious as well. And in
which way though? Is it the energy, the negative energy, or the positive energy?
And that's why you got to get the ratios right, I think. But I think that's right, Ross. Like if you can sort of then empower the resistor to be a part of the solution, that is a really feel-good moment as well. And that will ultimately drive the adoption because I saw the problem, we solved for that problem. How good is this solution?
Yeah, and everyone who thinks something's their idea loves that idea.
And generally other people will know that person is a hard to convince person or whatever, right? And so, hey, if they're bought in and they're part of this and they're telling me to do it, we must have already thought about all these things. So
I can't believe they got that piece of crap on board with us. Great. Yeah, maybe not.
It's
true though. Like you must have a pretty strong argument to get that person on board, right? That's the concept. Yeah.
You have to be vulnerable though in acknowledging that you may not solve for 100% of those workflows either. And like if you spin your wheels trying to solve for every scenario, as opposed to just acknowledging that the ROI on 80% is already that much better than the alternative, that in time we can solve for the 20% as well. So I think you've got to approach these.
So like you're not going for perfection. We're looking to solve problem by problem. Some things, aren't worth solving. Sometimes it's the things.
Well, in the best case you are, but there's also a business case that wraps around this to say that actually the cost saving is enormous potentially. And even if we only get 80% automated workflow, that the 20% of manual effort still results in a positive impact to the P&L. And that we trust that over time, as this platform improves or we can access sort of third-party applications through APIs or otherwise, that we can begin to automate this. But it doesn't have to be the goal from the day that you go live.
Okay. Two more things I want to cover off before we wrap this one up. One is just the technology adoption model itself. The way we work, there's always that kind of always be launching, like always do stuff. I guess that also gives you the ability to work with those resistors to kind of, if they've got a point pivot, kind of test things as you go, prove it to them. If you don't wait till this one massive launch to try and prove everything, you kind of showing, you probably get more buy-in along the process as well, maybe.
Yeah, there's a balance between, I was actually talking to one of our big providers about this the other day, which was, what's the balance between MVP and how feature rich does it need to be on day one? You don't want to just launch with one thing that it does badly. It has to be enough, but then, you're not going to launch a perfectly polished, complete thing. It is going to be a process. And what people do too often with a software project is launch it and move on to something else. Now, I can tell you every software vendor has a roadmap. They're launching new stuff every month, every quarter. And so you go back to a product that you launched or implemented 2 or 3 years ago, and you realize, wow, they've actually launched all this stuff since then. And I think even once something's fully implemented from what your original ROI is, one thing that we've really started to do now is go, okay, well, who's the owner for that? Who's actually going to make sure that every quarter we're going back, looking at the roadmap, saying, hey, they've launched 2 new things that could actually improve this over here now. Otherwise, you end up having this kind of point-in-time implementation that kind of just sits there.
That's why I'm a massive fan of zero-based budgeting and vendor-level planning. And it's this idea that every time you go through that budget cycle, you reset it to zero. You don't get last year's plus inflation anymore. Yeah. It's let's scrutinize every dollar, not because we're finance and that's what we do, but because of the fact that there is an opportunity to those costs being invested. And then the other point was you may have a number of vendors that are doing a very similar thing from a workflow perspective. And so is there then an opportunity through that process to consolidate some of that spend?
Okay. All right. That seemed very succinct and a good way to wrap it up. Okay. That is the end then of Adoption as a Multiplier. That is episode 4. We're going to be back with the 5th episode in 2 weeks' time. That is going to be all about the evolving nature of finance in the age of AI. We can't do a series without talking about AI. We'll see you in 2 weeks.